And we are live. I'm going to play the intro. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show, post-podcast live stream. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend, co-host William the Professor Collis, and Lindsay Poss, who was our guest on the podcast this week. What we do here, guys, for those who are new to the live stream, is we cover the less pressing topics and news of the week, although this week may be a little bit different. There may be some, by popular demand, requests to cover the more pressing news in gaming. But usually we cover the topics that we don't get to on the podcast. It's a little bit more lighthearted. It's a little bit more fun. We want to make it interactive.
Yeah.
And so we love to take questions. We love to make this a show for the people who are listeners and fans of the podcast and who tune in here for extra content and extra fun. On that note, guys, this week's podcast was perhaps the heaviest in one topic that I can remember in a long time.
The best, you mean? It was
It was also highly anticipated, apparently.
It was highly anticipated.
Yeah.
How mad would viewers of this live stream be? And just you can let me know in the comments here if we don't cover at all anything we talked about in terms of Mixer and Facebook gaming.
Yeah, basically,
and maybe you wait till tomorrow.
We only talked about one thing on the podcast, and it's Mixer and Facebook. And I don't want to say we talked about it. Like I mean, there was more to say, but like it was an analysis. Like there were viewpoints.
It was like 32 minutes, I think. It was a while.
It was like 32 minutes of analysis. Like honestly, like I've. What is that?
That was me, sorry. I'm in like an office, but then there's like a bunch of people playing games over there.
I literally thought
they're booing you, William. That was just
Paul with his soundboard.
Yeah, it could have been the soundboard, right?
Like doing something to make fun of me, and I was like, "Oh,
you would have got this." That's what you would have got.
Oh, he does have a soundboard. It's too powerful.
Yeah, that's just the family chiming in with their thoughts.
Do we start with a little bit of a teaser of the Facebook and Mixer stuff, or do we get into topics that we didn't cover?
What do
viewers want to hear?
Yeah, what do viewers want to hear? Do you want a sneak peek? Do you want to get the news, 24 hours ahead of the rest? I will say
we did 50 minutes on Mixer and Facebook on the podcast.
That's not true. We covered two other things. It was like 30
minutes. Yeah, but we kept bringing them back to Mixer and Facebook. I wouldn't shut up. I'd be like, this relates to Mixer and Facebook.
There were some World War I analogies. It got pretty in depth.
It did get pretty in depth. We went all the way back to World War I to try and explain what's going on with Mixer and Facebook.
We did. It was like that's a good. And the thing I didn't mention on the podcast is I've been listening to the hardcore history about World War I. Do you guys know hardcore history?
No.
No.
Oh, it's an excellent. It's actually another podcast, but not competitive for us because we won't. But it's just a guy who just goes into excruciating detail about history, but like in a very compelling way. And it was oddly apropos. I was like, oh, Mixer and Facebook is just like the invasion of France.
So Cameron says, wow, look at the gang. Alex finally able to join us this week. Hey, Alex, good to see you here. Martin's so mad the pressure is on. Greg, I don't know why you're upset. We're going to get to Facebook and Mixer. We have our thoughts. Don't worry. We spent a lot of time on it.
That was a little sad that Greg's only comment was a cry. I don't know if he was sad we were starting the live stream.
and Martin says, give us the minute take.
That's a good one, Martin.
William, what was your minute take?
I mean, my minute take is it's a hugely significant event. Here's the minute. Hugely significant event. There's a couple possible explanations for how it was handled. Either way, the messaging around it seems strange and oddly pessimistic, as if the streaming war had already been lost when it's still in its first inning. But the takes fit into one of two categories. Either this is driven by Microsoft knowing something about a power shift or a technology shift in the industry. That's what we call on the podcast the aliens invading theory. And then the other theory is the more prosaic theory, but perhaps the more likely, which we'll call the trench warfare theory, which is this is just about Microsoft not believing they can win and trying to group up with Facebook, which has a similar demographic, to draw some battle lines so that they can hunker down for the next, end period of years while they wait for something else to shift in the industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. My view was this was just a typical big company decision that did not surprise me all that much. And I think they've handed that social aspect of the gaming equation over to Facebook, knowing it was going to be a long, bloody war if they stuck in it, knowing the chance of success was very low, knowing that factors like William on the podcast brings up a great point about publishers wanting more of the pie, and so the margins for the platforms get worse and worse. And when you put all that together, they go, might as well just get out now, and not stick through this ugly war, and call a truce basically. And so my conclusion, I probably take it a step further than William does, although I think we came to some agreement on the World War I analogy, is that in some ways this ended the streaming war. In some ways now the lines are drawn. Everyone has sort of their place, and they will sort of mass their troops and partnerships and things like that. But I don't think anyone's going to make a big move anymore one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, we won't relitigate it. I disagree with that theory.
Me too. Okay.
Yeah.
For the record.
Yeah. Lindsay
Although Paul did change a little bit to say that it's just the first phase of the streaming wars.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then the only other point.
No, I just left open the option that the war may continue should technology or the battlefield change.
I mean, yeah.
You know what this is like? Did anyone watch that old sci-fi show? Was it Farscape? Like, did anyone ever watch that?
Like B kind of movie style?
Yeah, like B grade sci-fi.
Yeah.
I think it was Farscape.
Yeah.
Where in like the first season, they like get rescued by something and you don't know what it was and everybody forgets about it. And then in the 5th season, it turns out it was them going back in time to rescue themselves. That's what this is.
How is
your 7th analogy, and that's the biggest miss so far.
I will tease on the podcast. William somehow ties the Facebook Mixer announcement to the arrival of aliens from Xandar, I believe.
Yeah, Xandar's my go-to planet.
so if you're curious how that happens.
Bonus props if I got the planet right. That would be the real coup here.
Greg says, was Facebook a surprise? That's a good specific question. What do you guys think?
So I was going to talk about this anyway, but I don't think so because, like I had said before, it's the 2 smallest players teaming up to try to go against the bigger guys. So I don't think it's necessarily surprising that it was Mixer and Facebook Gaming. Someone has to do something to compete with YouTube and Twitch.
I wasn't surprised, Greg, that it was Facebook, and I'll tell you why for different reasons, although I think Lindsay's reasons are good. More just Amazon and Google, who are the other 2 options, really, are competitive with Microsoft in other areas, either operating system, PCs,
search
engine, they compete in other areas. And so much cleaner to go with Facebook where there's nothing competitive there. They're not getting into bed with the enemy, basically.
And I wasn't surprised, Greg, because I think you can summarize Facebook's entire live streaming strategy as why not? So this fits with that. This fits with that strong tactical viewpoint. Just seems like something crossing their decision-making desk that would be best addressed by that visionary viewpoint.
Lindsay's mom needs to stream her Bejeweled gameplay somewhere, William. Don't knock Facebook gaming.
No, it's me. I need to stream Bejeweled.
Excuse me.
You don't even have to go a generation back. It's me.
My Heroes of the Storm gameplay needs to get streamed somewhere, and I have still integrated, still one touch of a button.
Julian says, when is Will plugging his book this episode? William is no longer allowed to plug his own book. we've now reached. I have reached the quota of book plugging. I've met the quota.
Yeah.
Plug it. My turn. Everyone go pre-order William's book on Amazon. He's so excited. He looks at it every day and a single tear rolls down his face.
Yeah, William on the podcast today said that he's going to, that if you come to one of the book opening, like the book tour, authors sometimes appear at your local Barnes and Noble, if that even still exists, to plug their book, their new book. William will be there cradling his book, crying to himself.
That's exactly right. But they were tears of joy. We were very specific about that. They were tears of joy. Actually, my shirt, this is a true story. I know it's a little off topic. My wife got so sick of me talking about my book. I don't know if you can tell. This shirt that I'm wearing, it's not going to come up in the live stream, is actually my wife wrote on this shirt. It's like a make your own shirt. And it says, "Hello, I am the author of the Book of Esports. I won't shut up about it." She gave it to me for Father's Day. So thank you. It's very sweet.
Sounds about
right. I was like, oh, you definitely know me. We're definitely married.
Martin says, seems strange to poach huge streamers and not stick through it long term.
Sure does.
Yep. Yeah.
Nailed it.
Look, no, I disagree. This is where we disagreed. Because Martin, $30 million to Microsoft, it's nothing. They don't even notice that goes missing. It like literally no one at the company even notices that kind of money goes missing.
I don't think it's strange money-wise. I think it's...
That's what he said. Seems strange to poach huge streamers and not stick through it long.
Yeah.
They tried. It didn't
weirder
work.
That they didn't...
They shut it down.
Make them go onto Facebook Gaming or something.
Look, the comment I made on the podcast, guys, was if this was Google Stadia, this was Google, and they were the announcement was they're shutting it down, we'd all be going, wow, smart guys. They're like, really, very good. You recognize that it didn't work. Shut it down fast. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the same thing where they recognize it didn't work and they're shutting it down.
But see, I go with the exact counterpoint, which is I think Paul's having his cake and eating it too with that argument, because you can't say Microsoft doesn't notice 30 million, it's a rounding error, and then say Microsoft is uncommitted to maintaining this because what does this cost to run? They've done all the startup costs with the poaching and everything. Like, it costs 30 million to run. Why not let the chips ride? Because it's not like, my understanding is it's not like they get the money back. They don't get to go to Ninja and be like, oops, that was a terrible mistake. I guess you're going to return all that cash. Like those agreements have left the building. So I just think you can't have it. You can't have it both ways.
It sounds like fun at Lindsay's. Well, I don't know why why are we doing a Business Esports podcast?
Yeah, why?
we should be playing those games. Cameron says, will Ninja be launching his own streaming platform? Thoughts, Lindsay?
I hope not. I don't want it.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, this is a possible next step, right? Because now Shroud and Ninja are probably the two biggest names without a home.
I suppose if they wanted to, do some type of revolution where it was more direct to influencer payments and not have to deal with the bureaucracy organization of Twitch, then yes, they could start their own platform that's more straight into their own pockets. But I don't know. I think a little boneheaded.
I don't think they'd do that. I think they would do like Nick Cannon Wild and Out style, right? Like, I can see Shroud and Ninja presents wackiest moments of gaming on MTV. Like, I can see them doing a branded network syndicated suite of content. I can't see them yet going to the extent of launching their own platform. I wish I could see it. I just think because it's technically difficult to do. I don't think you just need, this isn't just as simple as having talent and then you're good to go. Like, I think they might try to do some owned content, branded content, serialization that gets them more leverage on their time. In fact, I'd be surprised if you didn't see that. I just don't think they can do their own streaming thing. I think that'd be crazy.
Unless it's because today they don't have that much leverage, right? Let's face it. Where are they going to go today? It's not like their people can knock on Twitch's door and say, hey, I could go these 4 different places, pay me and I'll come back.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of leverage. Look, I think it'd be very stupid for Ninja to try and launch his own platform just because I think it's just not in his wheelhouse, right? He may have very great business people backing him, but building a platform to live stream requires a level of expertise that I just don't think he has on his team, A. And B, I don't know if his brand is big enough, even then, frankly, to carry something like that long term.
Yeah, if Microsoft can't do it with Ninja,
right?
You think Ninja minus the Microsoft can do it? You know, like, I mean, good. I mean, granted, he probably has smaller metrics and different aims and everything. But at the end of the day, I also just don't think his personality type, like, some people want to use their fame to build businesses. I think Ninja's fame is an end in of himself. I think he's happy where he is right now. And I think he's concerned more about his legacy and transitioning to mainstream entertainment. I personally believe, right?
Julian says, I did pre-order your book months ago.
Nice.
Thank you, Julian. And Cameron says, William, I sent you a tweet about the book. You had asked me to DM you, but your DMs are closed. Sounds like a William thing.
That would be a William thing to do. That does sound like something that would be in my well-organized life. Cameron, message me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to get me. They're not closed there. LinkedIn me.
It's probably closed on
it's
there
probably
too.
closed. If you don't get to William, try
No, it's not. My
me.
LinkedIn's are open, I swear. I might have had to shut because, believe it or not, I get a lot of Twitter DMs because of the team, like a lot. I don't know why anyone would want to DM me, but yeah, shut up.
Opinions on Facebook gaming getting continuously denied from the Apple App Store. How damaging? You know, it's something actually we wanted to talk about on the live stream because we didn't get to it on the podcast. So let me just Derek will get to that in a second because we were going to talk about that. Martin says, William mentioned streaming being a trickle of viewership that is likely to flow later fast. Perhaps they needed to wait longer. So hard to say. Do you think they just didn't wait long enough for viewership to trickle in?
I mean, that's an interesting point. That sounds like something. I mean, I do think that the curve for these things is exponential, right? You know, that's another truth about it. If you look at the adoption of these social networks, it's a very viral growth curve, and humans are very bad at estimating exponential growth. So, yeah, that certainly could be an argument. Is like they could say, "Oh, we're not getting anywhere," but really, if you're getting a little bit of the way there, you know, it's like if you start at one viewer and you double it's the old chessboard problem, right? You start at one viewer and you double every week. You have more money.
Seem to be on that trajectory, though, William. Right? That's
They weren't doing anything interesting to be on that trajectory.
Well, they signed big names. Again, they tried.
Yeah,
they tried something and it didn't work.
Okay, here's a question.
Hold on, let's get to Julian's question for 1 second. Then you can put your question, William. How can anyone compete with Twitch as a game streaming service? There can't be startups or new small actors in this space. Can there not? Critical mass is necessary. We also touch on this in the podcast. My view is, again, like think World War I trench warfare, where everyone's now dug in. Twitch is dug in. They have kind of their more hardcore gaming audience. They have the just chatting audience. Then you've got YouTube that's dug in, that has a little bit more of the Fortnight age group, plus all the VOD audience. And then you have Facebook that's kind of the casual and everything else, like the more casual gamer and the everything else audience. And everyone's kind of carved their space out now and will sit in the trenches and defend that space, basically, with very little movement. Like, I don't think we're going to see big gains made by any one platform against another. I think what will happen, the only way that changes, the only way a Twitch gets threatened, is if one side develops new weapons to beat the other. In other words, technology changes, the battlefield changes, the equation changes fundamentally. Like, all of a sudden now we're not watching game streaming the way we do on Twitch. Now everyone wants to watch it in VR. I don't know, giving you a stupid example, but that could change significantly where someone could threaten Twitch because Twitch is just not playing there. If that happened.
Yeah,
you guys have your own thoughts on how Twitch could be vulnerable, right? Like, is it like the people of Xandar?
Yeah, that was the parallel.
Yeah, or I mean, they're vulnerable to probably what I would call like probably a better word, like strip peeling, or like basically like if you can find narrow bands of users that don't share a whole bunch of affinity with the rest of the platform, you can kind of peel back their presence. That's another way that they might lose. So, I mean, I don't know if this is a good example, but I'll give you an example. Like, you could look at, say, speedrunning, and say speedrunning is very badly served on Twitch today. The UI doesn't really work for it. It's a small community, but it's very loyal. It's anchored around a few major events. And could you peel speedrunning off and build a integrated speedrunning platform? You might be able to do that. And Twitch wouldn't really notice. They probably wouldn't really defend it too much. And you could peel that strip off. And then you could say, well, is anybody doing, game reviews, right? Like, game reviews aren't super popular on Twitch. There are people who do game review only channels, and they might be vulnerable to sort of these smaller, differentiated market plays, gradually chipping off audiences from them. But they might not. I mean, I just seem to, the more and more I'm thinking Twitch is a social network, and those things just are really hard to move, Like, Facebook doesn't go. The only thing that moves social networks, it seems, is demographic drift. Or
whatever technology changes.
Yeah, technology change. That's it. Demo drift and technology. So either, ew, my mom and dad are on it, no way. Or, wow, this is so new and different. This old platform never contemplated it.
That's actually such a great point, William. Like, what kills Twitch is if my parents all of a sudden are on Twitch.
I know.
Right? Like, if your parents are on Twitch, all of a sudden Twitch is no longer where people want to be.
I know, unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, that's exactly right. Yeah.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Julian says, I just think the platform loyalty is just too great in Amazon's favor for anyone to steal the market away in a meaningful sense. Yeah, I think we've all, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think we've all come to that conclusion. Like, there's just, they are not operating as dumb pipes as people may have thought.
Mm-hmm.
They're much stickier.
I do agree. I still think that there's a lot of room for people to do new and interesting things. That I don't think Twitch is it. Like, I don't think anyone logs onto Twitch and says, like, yes, this is exactly the platform I want to watch my streams on. It's set up exactly how I want it to be. Like, just
like no one thinks Facebook is it, or Twitter is it, or
so you're always willing
we all
to try
know
something else.
None of these are end games, but I think where people underestimate is just how long it does take to displace them.
Well, just how powerful network effects are. It's really difficult because you have to have, n number of users, and even if there's usually a threshold with them, and it's really hard and expensive to get to your threshold. And then even when you're at threshold, you're a worse service because, I could imagine a way better version of Twitch, but nobody's on it. And it's a real challenge to convince people to move, right?
Oh, we talked about that with game stores last week, and Steam hasn't updated its website in 700 years.
I know.
It's still on Steam.
And the reality is that there are huge structural incentives to keep people locked in Twitch. Like, if I'm a new streamer, the hosting networks that get it set up for me are very powerful on Twitch. They really help me differentiate myself and grow an audience. And you can replicate that on a new service, but you have to do it with marketing and expense. Very cost expensive.
I think that my biggest question will be if another service will cannibalize from Twitch, or if, like social media, people will just use multiple services for different things.
Yeah. Or, I mean,
good question.
Yeah.
I mean, we already do see that a little bit, like you said, with VOD versus live and all that. But there could potentially be a completely different service that we haven't thought of at all that is appealing for a completely different reason, and that's where a lot of live streaming happens. Who knows?
The only other thing we didn't talk about that also interests me is, like, so let's say you're an investor in caffeine, right? So a streaming platform with arguably less traction than Mixer, right? But a lot of backing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you thinking now? Are you like, oh, good, our competitor cleared the way, we're number 3 overnight? Or are you like, whoa, I have burned all my money? I mean, like, I'm curious. Like, it's interesting. You could spin it both ways.
I mean, the backers of caffeine are traditional entertainment, right?
Yeah.
It's like Fox, and these are not the quickest to recognize, like, change in an industry and adapt. So, I have a funny feeling we're although we should probably see a similar announcement from caffeine, we won't.
Has there been any, like, recent, like, the last piece of news I remember from caffeine was that they signed Quavo from Migos.
Quavo?
From Migos, the rap group. Come on.
Obviously, that was the thing that was what was needed there.
That was the last time I saw them in the
Obviously.
news. Have they done anything interesting?
I mean,
I thought they had like a NASCAR deal, didn't they?
Did they?
I'm gonna,
Oh.
Yeah, I feel like
BTS
they'll hang on to
That
like
could be a
their
big
little
deal.
niche for a while. Derek,
oh my God, the
Derek says, "Oh my God, the blank stares."
I was not expecting that. Leave it to William to know about Japanese chess, but not like one of the most famous rap groups in America.
Dude,
And Paul,
I'm like really like I live in it. Like, guys, there's a lot of limitations in my life, and one of them is like I live in a very narrow bubble, like in my
of obscure Japanese copies of American things.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Alex says, if Ninja's priority is the transition to mainstream entertainment, wouldn't it be smart to go back to Twitch for the eyeballs, even if there's a cost of doing business for him there?
Yeah.
Here's the question for you guys. Like, I'm curious what the audience thinks. Why has Ninja or Shroud not announced something yet? Because I don't think either has.
Yeah.
And when do we think we're going to get announcements from either of them?
Well, one is I suspect they were blindsided by this news. That's part of this. Is I think there was no transition plan for the talent, which tells me this decision was very sudden, right?
And what are their options, William? Like, what are their people saying behind closed doors right now? You think?
I think one is they're high-fiving because they're saying, "Oh, we got all the money and now we're out of the deal. What do we do?" So first, everybody's really happy. Yeah. So they've had a steak dinner, they've toasted their champagne, and they say, "Well, where do you want to stream again?" And I suspect it will come down to the limitations that, it'll come down to another big pile of money because they've shown that they're motivated by money, right? So they'll probably put it out to bid and look for a big bag of cash. I suspect they will be less willing to take that big bag of cash now because they're aware that there's challenges with transient streaming platforms. I think it will come to be more about where they see their careers going, because I think Ninja sees his career going beyond live streaming into mainstream TV. And my understanding is Twitch is now trying to put more limitations and control around their talent to keep them platform exclusive. So if I was going to place a bet, I would say, even though you're right from a reach leverage perspective, Twitch, I don't think Ninja goes back to Twitch. I think you're more like, this is a bit weird, I think you're more likely to see him announce a deal with Disney or something. I'm quite serious. Like,
I was going to say, William, I feel like there's a scenario where one or both of them doesn't go back to streaming.
Yeah.
And I think it's more likely Ninja, most likely Ninja, because I don't understand why he would. Why go and sit 8 hours a day on your computer live streaming? I think in his mind, his brand's bigger than that.
A show on Fox. He's been in like a bunch of different other YouTube star series.
Right.
And that's all while he had his contract with Microsoft. So
He's got $30 million in his pocket. If I'm his people, I'm going, don't go back anywhere.
Yeah, well, and this was his walk away money too, because if you think about it, he knew when he was taking the Mixer deal, he was risking his career to some extent. So he had to have said to himself, is this the amount of money that if I get, I'm set, I'm happy with this? So he has the walk away money now for sure. So you're right. He doesn't sort of need to. When you have a success like this, lifestyle questions, other questions start to matter more. It's less about what makes sense for him career wise and more about what the guy wants to do.
And we're already seeing it, right? Like he announced this like mini team for his Valorant tournament that he's participating in. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah. He's got his Ninja Fortnight battles thing. So, he's got, like, where he can pick and choose these projects he gets involved with, none of which are like involve him having a 7-day-a-week live streaming schedule.
Yeah, if I suspect he wants to move to the American Idol judge role where he shows up, says a few things, high fives, gets his name on the billing card and moves on. That's
the goal here, right? That's the goal of the business of esports fundamentally.
That's exactly right, guys. If you think you get all this content like this going, nuh-uh. As soon as we can phone this
as soon as the $30 million hits the bank, we're just gonna pick and choose. We're not none of this, 4 pieces of content a week.
You guys are going to be lucky to have Paul read the intro. I'm telling you that. Like,
I won't. It'll be a lookalike.
Yeah. Sound alike, lookalike.
Sound like lookalike.
Deep fake. They'll deep fake the intro.
Yeah.
Derek says maybe they're being strategic and waiting for everyone to run to them with large offers. I don't know why anyone would run to them with large offers.
Did you say
Lindsay,
what?
You're shaking your head. Like with Twitch, be running to Ninja with large offers?
I
Why?
don't think so. I mean, when he switched, he retained 85% of his audience stayed on Twitch.
Yeah,
Twitch and Shroud left, Ninja and Shroud left Twitch, and Twitch didn't really see any change. And it's not like Mixer got a huge boost, so there's not really an incentive for YouTube to be like, hey, come stream with us. I don't think
the YouTube guys are asleep anyways. I don't think the YouTube guys have seen the announcement yet.
Probably not.
When they wake up.
That was one thing, though. I don't think that there's been a good way of figuring out how to do contracts or payments yet for streamers. Like, I don't think that that's been set in stone, because obviously this contract with Mixer went, and then Mixer went down. So why would Twitch kept his audience. I don't know why anyone would be running to Ninja when he didn't really get any results from it. I just don't think there's not really a good system yet for how you pay, retain, sign, keep, manage talent between the platform and the talent.
And there's too much risk. Like, let's agree that Twitch isn't offering any of these guys bags of money to come back. I feel like there's risk in going back, because if you go back and your audience is not there, you know what I mean? Like it's
kind of like admitting defeat. It's like, if Ninja pops back on Twitch right away, it's like, you left and you tried, and now we all started watching Tin the Tap Man and Dr. Disrespect, and we don't care about you anymore.
Yeah, we were always
watching Dr. Disrespect.
Yeah,
love the doc. It's just I don't think anyone's in a hurry, because everybody sort of looks bad here. Like, and if you're Twitch, you're not gonna. Oh yeah, Greg nailed it.
You can go back on Family Feud
or lose at The Masked Singer right away.
He's charming. He was charming on Family Feud.
William, what were you going to say?
Like, just everybody looks bad. I mean, Lindsay said it, but just everybody looks bad. Like, if you're Twitch, you're in no rush to call the guy up, because at some point his people are going to get in touch with you. So you don't want to look weak. So you're going to sit there. If you're Ninja, you're in no rush to call up Twitch, because you know that it's going to be like, hey, I remember how we broke up.
Exactly.
It was only a few months. Like, I think, you're not looking forward to that conversation. He's not in a rush. About the only person who's picking up the phone right now, I would say, and it's even arguable they are, is like a Caffeine, because I could see Caffeine saying, oh my God, Ninja's in the market, just go get him. It didn't work for Microsoft. They know what they're doing. Just go get him. Right.
Oh, I did have the wrong member of Migos, by the way. It was Offset, not Quavo. He's the one who's married to Cardi B. You guys need to learn some culture.
Migos?
Huh? Yeah, Migos is 3 people.
So they got Amigos out of all.
Wouldn't it then be the 3 Amigos?
He is the second most famous Migos, though.
They didn't even get the most. I mean, that's like that. Like,
making the most famous now.
I'm sure they have big social media followings now, right?
Drake is on there too. I was going to say, you guys know who Drake is, right? Paul, he's Canadian.
The only 3 Amigos I know are from 1986. It's
not
Steve
an
Martin.
Amigo. It's just Amigo.
First of all,
Migos, Migos.
How do you take the A out of it and have 3 of them?
Just Migos.
No,
just whatever. We don't know what we're talking about here. This is a little bit beyond us.
But Drake is on there too, which is more interesting than having.
Yeah, but have you seen them on there? Have you watched them on there?
No. It's also not like Drake has a streaming schedule like Dr. Disrespect does of 5 days.
I feel like no one has publicized this. Like, there's been no splash. Nope. I haven't heard of anyone watching it. To me, it seemed more like PR hype than anything else.
Yeah.
Greg says maybe Dancing with the Stars. I actually think Ninja would be good there. Mm-hmm. Do you think they're working on something or figuring out where they went? Yeah, we talked about that. It's either an interpretation of Amigos or referencing a drug house.
Yeah, they have a famous song called "Trapping Out the Bando."
Yeah. Oh, again, Lindsay, you're just really bringing that perspective. Then
someone has got to do it.
Yeah. By the way, Cameron, if you can't message me on LinkedIn for some reason, add me again. If it says connections only, I'll add you and you can message me there. Sorry, just as a side, I see that comment too. You should be able to get. Yeah.
Let's get to some topics that we didn't cover on the podcast. Although I will tease that we did talk about chess on the podcast, chess as an esport. And we did also talk about the Epic Games Store challenging Steam in a very big way, like from a numbers perspective, getting really close up to where Steam is at. So we did cover those 2 things in addition to the Facebook Mixer news. This one I wanted to talk about. I don't know why I love this announcement so much, but I'm actually super excited about it. And I'll link it here. Apple bringing keyboard and mouse gaming to the iPad. And like I'm the guy who has no faith in the future of mobile gaming, like zero, right? But I see something like this, and I'm thinking to myself, if you can build an iPad with enough graphical horsepower, which Apple seems to be able to do, have game designers build relatively better experiences than typical like mobile slot machines, and give me a mouse and a keyboard, like this could be the ultimate LAN party setup. Is just toting my iPad and a mouse and a keyboard. Like I love this. I don't know. It's no one talked about this obviously in the context of Facebook and Mixer. Who cares about keyboard and mouse gaming on the iPad? But I think that's game changing for mobile. No,
I think it's awesome. It has a very much Nintendo Switch type of energy, like very portable, easy. The one thing I wonder is who. I mean, I'm assuming that you'd have to go through the Apple Game Store.
Yeah, you would still have to buy the games that Apple provides.
Yeah, I know, but that's the problem.
I don't know. I mean, look, I'm lacking imagination here. But like, it's tough for me to believe, like, there's a whole rigmarole around porting over to the, tablets as a form factor. Like, I don't think you're going to get a whole bunch of AAA games on your iPad anytime soon. I mean, I'm excited. The news to me sort of should have been like, how did Apple not have keyboard and mouse support for this device until now? Or at least keyboard support. Like, that should sort of be the news, is like, Apple still desperately clinging to its walled garden philosophy despite massive user demand for...
Okay, but let's tie this, William, to something you wanted to talk about, which didn't make it into the podcast.
Okay,
which was this article from 9to5 Mac, talking about the top 10 iOS games. So this is just iOS. This is just the app store for Apple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'll link the article here. Top 10 iOS games generate 13 million in daily revenue, says report, with Fortnite being number one. Like this is a significant amount of revenue coming through just iOS apps. You don't think there's a world where if the iPad gets powerful enough and the input methods get mainstream enough, potentially Apple's App Store is the new Steam? Come on, like where are the mobile believers here? Where are the hardcore mobile, like the devout?
Yeah, I love mobile games. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that Apple's not it. They, like William said, it's a walled garden. I mean, they've now rejected the Facebook gaming app 5 times. I don't. If you're looking for people to get more hardcore into gaming and not just play Bejeweled with their little mouse that comes with it now, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I the thing that surprises me here is you have to believe that the App Store is whale game driven, right? So you probably have to believe that the top 10 games are a very significant portion of total revenues, right, for the App Store, right?
Yeah.
Let's say their top 10 games are hypothetically 25% of revenue, right? Just took a round number. I was so surprised by this because if you do this math, the top 10 mobile games, right, are still a quarter of the revenue of Fortnite PC in a full year, right? And by the sizing math I just did of 25%, the entire App Store revenue is equivalent to a Fortnite. That, to me, that sizing says to me the opposite, is mobile games aren't mattering as much as we think, because we're taught to believe mobile gaming is the larger market than more heavy. And maybe it's true because the long tail is so large, but just on that back of the envelope math I'm doing there, it shows you that no, the hit PC games are just freaking huge. They're just huge. They're dominating the.
Yeah, I see the math you're doing. So
yeah.
So it says here Fortnite does 2.75 million of average daily revenue on iOS. If you work that out, that's about $83 million a month. And Fortnite on good authority is doing like 250 to 300 a month at least.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a quarter of the total.
Yeah, it's just weird to me. It's just because for the people who believe mobile first, right? I think you at least believe mobile's the larger pie because of the casual viewer base and the more sophisticated monetization models, and this sort of points to be the opposite.
Yeah, Derek here says, is there public data available to see the age demographic of these games? 2.4 million a day for Roblox.
I know.
Lindsay, is there public data available?
Not really, no. I wish.
I don't think so,
nice.
because the Roblox, these are private companies essentially.
Yeah,
right? They're not publishing.
Very unfortunate.
I just don't get the Roblox thing. Like, how have I missed that game so much? I just don't understand how people play games that are less fun. Like Minecraft on mobile, I get, but like I don't know. It's just a puzzle to me.
Roblox is the demographic just before that. Like if you're 13 to 17, Minecraft's fine. But if you're like 9 to 11, like Roblox is your sweet
spot.
Your sweet spot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Derek, Roblox is a kid's game. Although they have mods that like make it sort of like an adult game. Like they have a CS:GO mod kind of thing, or like a deathmatch mod with Roblox characters, and
they have a Baldur's Gate style mod, I think, that turns it into an RPG. They have some good stuff, yeah.
Good grief.
But no, there's 9 to 11-year-olds pumping out 2.4 million a day.
Yeah, it's one 9-year-old who's freaking killing it on his YouTube channel.
No, it's mom's credit card, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. The reality is it's like they saved it and didn't know what the kid's doing with it now. Which
actually, I've always said there is room in the market for innovation around financial instruments for like that age demographic, like 8 to 16-year-olds who don't have bank accounts, who don't have credit cards. How do you make it easy for them to spend money, but still totally trackable and controllable by the parents?
It's an interesting idea, Paul. Yeah, couple compliant funds for kids.
It's a tricky one.
I have a question about this iPad
kids.
thing.
Yeah,
Who's the audience that's buying it?
Mom and dad.
The iPad to game?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's your parents. My parents.
But then
that's the iPad audience, big time.
Right. Exactly. So then, what is the appeal of them adding a gaming mouse? I mean, most people have
it's hard to drag those Scrabble tiles by hand, Lindsay.
Yeah, I guess it cramps. I get it. I was gonna say your thumbs get tired. My thumbs get tired from playing mobile games.
Sometimes you want that lean forward Scrabble experience, the hardcore one.
No, I will like
acceleration.
I don't know how niche this is, but let's like if I could play Overwatch, League of Legends, Valorant, like the typical esports titles, right? If I could play the esports titles on my iPad with a keyboard and mouse and didn't need any other hardware, didn't even need the thing to be plugged in, and it could last, 5-6 hours, that's a pretty, like, for most people that would replace their gaming laptop. It's a pretty disruptive product, I think. There would definitely be a niche cross section of gamers that satisfies all of their needs.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you have 2 or 3 dominant titles that are esports related titles, those tend to be lower. Like Valorant's not hogging your system resources, right?
No.
It's designed to be very accessible. It's a fair point. And you're maybe you do some light games tourism, but maybe the Apple Store and some of the more premium games can substitute that for you. And you're right, it's ultra portable, right?
Yeah.
And more, the thing that holds back gaming portability for me is, ouch, I burn my knees. The battery life for this thing sucks. And the screen hurts my eyes. And you fix all of those with the iPad. You're right, Paul. It's more disruptive than I'm giving it credit for,
For $1,000 basically? I don't know. That's pretty compelling.
Plus, people can think I'm working on the train, except rather than me being embarrassed by the fact that all I'm doing is just...
And you break out this gaming laptop and the fans are loud and you got to have it plugged in and like...
I'm like embarrassed to like a big problem I have gaming when I travel is embarrassment. Like I don't want people to know. Like I'm just like, oh, this is
Why the shame?
because it's a whole rigmarole. It's like it feels disruptive to other people. You know what I mean? Like you take it out and it's like
No.
No, to me, the disruption is part of the experience. The mouse should be bright and loud. You know, they got to know you're not just working. You got to get the mouse pad out because you don't want to put your mouse on whatever surface you're traveling on.
I boot up Doom Eternal. I put on my external speakers to play the hard ride. Say hi. Hey guys, sorry, is this the quiet car on Amtrak? Because
as long as you don't turn on that overhead light, it's fine.
No one wants the glare. I mean, Greg's point is a perfect segue to what we wanted to talk about next, which is and related to this mobile news from iOS, from Apple. Hang on here. Is that Nintendo might be cooling off on its mobile gaming ambitions. So you have, numbers like this coming out of Apple showing tremendous amounts of dollars being generated on the mobile side. And Nintendo also showing a ton of growth on the Switch side, but actually backing off on the mobile side. So where before they had planned to release a lot of their games on mobile, now it seems it's going to be much more Switch focused. Why do you guys think they're backing off here?
I mean, I think it's a little bold because obviously things are different since we are in a pandemic and Switches are selling out like crazy since everyone's at home. But they might just be waiting to see if the energy and excitement around the Switch stays when the economy stabilizes once again. That would be what I would. I mean, it kind of seems like their current strategy, along with current events, allowed them to blow up a little bit. So why not ride that wave? That would be my first thought.
But are you guys not seeing like my prophecy kind of coming true here? Like the puzzle pieces coming together. Everything that's mobile is becoming more PC-like, right? Even an iPad, and even the mobile numbers, while big, are not as big as maybe we all think they are, right? Like Fortnite's a good example where it's only a quarter of the pie there. And then you get Nintendo saying, well, we don't want to be doing mobile anymore. We're backing off.
Yeah.
Right. And so you end up really with a mobile landscape that looks like just a lot of slot machine copies, basically.
I know, guys. I think you're giving Nintendo too much credit here. Like, I love Nintendo, but there's a publisher never want to leave their comfort zone.
No.
They've always been design-led, right? Like, just as a firm, they're design-led. They probably were dragged kicking and screaming to the mobile market with numbers and sales arguments, and to the point where they basically had to listen because of some activist shareholders, like we've spoken about in the past. Now they finally have a real sign of life on the traditional business model they're comfortable with. This is the perfect opportunity to red flag those uncomfortable initiatives internal to the company and say, no, we told you so. The old way is working. Silence. Like, they're dumb not to be in mobile. They're dumb because you just have to be in mobile today. Everybody has a mobile phone. It doesn't matter if you think it's an inferior graphic. You should just have it because it's a point of contact with your consumer. That's like not being on Twitter because you think Twitter's dumb. Like, I'm sure plenty of big companies are like, oh, it's fucking, this is so dumb. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. It's so dumb having this Twitter account. Oh, we just paid the social media and they just tweet junk all day. I wish they still have to have it because it's a touch point with your consumer. They should be in mobile. They're just uncomfortable with it. They don't like what it does, and they've never been flexible with out licensing or anything to do with that, and they don't want to start now, and now they have an excuse not to go through with it.
I mean, Derek brings up a good point here, though, William, which I was going to bring up. Mobile giants like Apple take 30% of revenue. Maybe they don't want to share, right? And in their minds, they go, yeah, okay, so we lose 10 downloads, but maybe we gain one purchase of another Switch because that person can't play Mario anywhere else. And the margin on the Switch is way better, and the margin on the games on the Switch are way better. And so why give people our games in an ecosystem we don't control, where someone's putting their hands in our pockets, when we could lead, maybe some percentage of those people into an ecosystem we do control, where the margins are much better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the argument they're making internally. And I think they're basically saying, like, our brands are really valuable. This is risk dilutive. We risk losing control. We risk cannibalizing sales. And, like I said, to some credit, I think sometimes companies are too hungry to take risks, right? Like sometimes businesses have so much pressure to grow from stock markets and investors that they get to a good defensible position in the market. And then they do weird things like buy AOL, Time Warner, right? Because they feel, uncomfortable with their business model. And to be fair, you could argue that the more patient long-termist capital that funds Japanese companies is having a positive effect here. It's letting a business that's parked out in a nice defensible niche in the market, servicing its customers really well, continue to do that with no unnecessary risk-taking or quarterly update calls where people are chasing the next hottest bell and whistle. Like, you could argue this is a benefit to the Japanese long-termist capital management here.
Cameron and Martin both brought up the Pokemon MOBA announcement, partnered with Tencent. Did you guys see that?
I didn't, and now I'm excited.
And Martin is right. It is mobile and Switch crossplay. So
that seems better. I think if they put all their mobile, if they made a bunch of mobile games and put them on the App Store, I feel like it would cheapen the things that they've built a lot. Whereas when they introduce these kind of novel things that people can get on their phones, it's much more of an exciting thing that then leads them to purchase Nintendo products.
Yeah, but if you can play it on your mobile phone, you're not going to go buy a Switch.
If you can play all of them, yes. But if you can play one Pokemon game, it might get you reacquainted with the brand or things that Nintendo's a very nostalgic brand for a lot of people.
Yeah, I generally don't buy the cannibal. Like, I think cannibalization has to be really direct. Like, I think it's tough to argue that you're going to play Mario on your phone, you're going to play Zelda on your phone, and then you're not going to be interested in Breath of the Wild too. Like, you're not going to say, oh, I wish I could play. Like, I think those cannibalization arguments I know you can make them, and it depends I think they're a hard pill to swallow. I think in general, brands show you more touch points, more sales. The Pokemon MOBA thing is just a whole, that like deserves an episode in and of itself. There's not a lot to say about it other than like, it's going to change the world. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon fans. They've wanted something like this for years. You see in that mobile article the success of Pokemon Go. It's not even a good game, and it was the second highest grossing game on the App Store. And it's like old, and I don't know what updates have happened to it. Like, it's going to make a ton of money, and it's Tencent, so it's going to be huge in Asia. They can drive it across all their platforms. So,
Go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just going to say, I generally agree with you that, more points of contact with the consumer is better. It's just, like you said, Nintendo also has this kind of traditional brand and games and stuff that to me, it would cheapen it to throw them all in the App Store. I think it's almost a good advertising strategy to put a few here or there, or develop a few interesting ones here or there to get people reacquainted, reminded on why they like that brand, and then to go out and purchase more Nintendo products where the margins are higher.
But I have a funny feeling that's what they struggle with as a company internally. It's like, let's make something not as good to put on mobile so that hopefully people go buy something really great on Switch. And like convincing a game developer who always wants to make a great game, go make something a little less good for mobile is kind of a weird, it's a weird imperative to give. It's a weird order to give your people. And I'm sure they struggle with that.
Good, but not that good. The best thing about this game has to be the brand, just so we're clear.
Mobile good, but not Switch good. It's I
don't know. There are a lot of app developers that might go in for that.
What's that?
They came to me with that pitch. They said, "Hey, you can have Mario, just don't make it too good." I'd say, all right, I have Mario. See what you try.
Isn't that what they did? Didn't they make Mario
Mario Run?
The kind of games where it's like you're on rails basically, and you just have to press jump. Like, they took Mario and they made it slightly worse.
That just cheapens it so much.
I'm going to go on a rant
at all.
I'm just convinced that there's a large portion of the games market driven by parents who are scared to let their kids play good games. They don't understand them, who go to these neutral, diluted, miserable games because they can enjoy them. And I'm really convinced that like a large portion of the game market is driven by artificial parental gating, moving to less complex, simplified titles because they feel safer. Like there's no way the Mario Run experience is any less any more age appropriate than Mario Odyssey. And one is a fulfilling intellectual experience with fun puzzle solving skills. And the other is literally something you can do with one eye shut while drinking water and listening to this podcast, which you should always
reading William's book too.
And reading
let's see where some of these other games fall on your list here, William, because this was an interesting announcement. I didn't even know this existed, but now that I know it exists, we need to figure out how to get in here. Mm-hmm. Minecraft inducted into the World Video Game Hall of Fame. The other inductees for 2020 are, Lindsay, you're going to like this, Bejeweled, Centipede, and King's Quest. And interestingly enough, King's Quest is like a game I loved as a kid, like one of the greatest games ever made, I think, if you ask
Paul,
me.
do you have a favorite King's Quest? Because I do.
Do I have a favorite King's Quest? Correct me if I'm wrong, William, and you're the historian here, but it was not originally called King's Quest, right? The original Sierra game was Hero's Quest.
Yeah, there is something like that the branding got flipped over.
Yes. And I think I played it when it was Hero's Quest, and then I got into and I was playing them with my dad and my brother, right? But we got into the King's Quest series. I don't remember each one individually to tell you, oh my God, I love this one over the other. I just remember playing the whole series.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah,
I mean that was the Sierra Broderbund, like that was like the golden age of PC gaming in some way. Yeah,
that was a fun time that's lost to Tanzania. But by the way, I would like to call out the Video Game Hall of Fame here.
Yeah. Did you even know this existed? Did either of you know this existed?
Nope, I'm on their website right now, and it's awesome.
I'm just deeply confused. Like this is like the sort of Hall of Fame inductees you would announce if you had been in cryogenic stasis for 20 years. You'd be like,
they all are. Oregon Trail, Microsoft Solitaire, Pong, Pac-Man, Zelda.
Okay, but it takes time. It's like it's like football. They don't induct players.
Jump 20 years. It's like Centipede. I would get it if it was Centipede, King's Quest, and Pac-Man, but it's Centipede, King's Quest, and Minecraft. It's like 30 years old right now. Like,
and Bejeweled. Don't forget about it.
Because here's the problem, William. If Minecraft wasn't in this announcement, no one would have run this story.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Yeah. Like if the announcement was Video Game Hall of Fame inducts Centipede, King's Quest, and Leisure Suit Larry, no one would have even run with that story.
Right. That's right. True. Yeah, all titles that should be there, by the way. Like we gotta.
Look. You know how I feel about award shows. Do you think the industry needs Video Game Hall of Fame? Like, is a Hall of Fame different from an award show? What's the point of these things? Someone please convince me why we need these things.
I mean, if we win them, there'll be a point, Paul.
But we'll be long dead, right? Don't they have to wait till you die, basically, and then they induct you?
No,
that's what would make sense. Like if these were dead brands.
All right. No one has any thoughts or feelings on the Video Game Hall of Fame?
No, it's like just a list of really popular video games. It's exactly
where is it based, Lindsay? Where is it based? Does it say where they're based? Like, do they have a physical presence like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or?
They do have a National Museum of Play.
Which is where?
It's in New York. It's in Manhattan, Rochester, 1 Manhattan Square. That was tricky.
Guys, I think we should be live streaming. We could be the first podcast inducted into the
on the roof. That
would be so fun.
No.
I also feel like if Centipede can get in, we have a reasonable shot. Like
of getting in.
Yeah.
Are there categories for humans, or is it only video games?
Ooh, okay. We have to go back to just the Hall of Fame page. This is for the entire Museum of Play.
The other option is we create the global video game Hall of Fame and induct ourselves. Like,
there is no option for humans.
Oh, that's so much for that.
Mhm.
Let's talk. This is I can't remember who mentioned earlier. They wanted us to talk about this, and it is one of the stories that we didn't get to. Apple's rejection of Facebook's gaming app conveniently leaks just when everyone's mad at Apple. So supposedly, the Apple on the App Store has rejected for like the 5th time. I think it was the 5th time. Facebook's gaming app, and they've used the excuse that the app violated Section 4.7 of its App Store rules, which states that HTML5 games are allowed as long as the code is not offered in a store or store-like interface. And supposedly, Facebook took out their store and even then still got denied. Why, William? Why is Apple? What's their beef with Facebook?
I mean, this was the joke for me. Is like, I think this might be one of those things where it doesn't matter how many times you submit this. They don't seem to want to, because you're telling me there's not like back channel like this isn't like, I don't think this is like some junior app reviewers like, oh, like this is a strategic decision. Like, you don't reject, if you're Apple, you don't reject Facebook's gaming app and have it not at least go to some VP somewhere who signs off on it, right? This is, the Apple views controlling the App Store as very important. They view gaming as a critical element of the revenues on the App Store and a driver for users. They don't want to let anybody come in to their ecosystem who's even remotely competitive. And they know that they have to have some standards of neutrality. And so they're going to have to let Facebook gaming on at some point in the future, at some point. But they're going to make it incredibly stringent. They're going to make it as difficult as possible. They're going to delay for as long as possible. And they're going to ensure the final product is as watered down as they can get it. And it's that simple.
But what's the fear? What is Apple afraid of here?
The same thing Apple was afraid of with Google Maps and everything else, right? They just don't like core functionality being delivered by another major Silicon Valley player.
Is the fear that they're going to be cut out of their 30% somehow, potentially?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that Facebook will find a way to cut them out of that, have their own store, have their own offering.
Yeah. I mean, the Apple App Store, the entire process for getting things submitted is one of the greatest pieces of evidence in the case about antitrust being made against them right now. The awesome thing about Apple is that their security and their policies and their stringency for getting on the App Store is extremely high. But the really bad thing about Apple is that their security and their policy and their stringency for getting into the App Store is extremely high. So they block everyone from.
Are you suggesting that they spin those positive things in potentially more nefarious ways to block competitors or competitive offerings?
Sometimes it's nefarious. Sometimes it's truly about safety of the consumer. It just depends on the case. I think in this case, I think it's I don't know exactly I used to do this in basketball a lot, where I would do things that I knew were wrong, but if I wasn't really getting caught, I would just like pinching people when you're playing. You know, it's just kind of annoying. I did that for sure. Are you supposed to pinch people when you're playing a physical sport so that you hurt them a little bit? Definitely not. But no one was ever going to see me do it.
I see.
Yeah.
So you could just the pinching.
Yeah. Well, and the way these articles are written are hilarious because it's Facebook developers are so used to this because it's not their second or third or fourth. It's their 5th time. And everyone is kind of making fun of Apple for it. But in the same vein, there's many people that use Apple because it's more secure and protected. Apple can choose to use that as a pinch against other competitors if it wants to.
But unless the government comes along and says Apple's wall around their 30% cut is anti-competitive, unless government or regulators step in, they don't need to approve this.
Nope.
Like there's nothing that says their app selection process has to be fair.
Guys, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to go around and say this is obviously anti-competitive. This stuff, the App Store thinks has been anti-competitive for years. we seem to have weak sauce regulation of tech in the United States. So I don't think
William, you are opening up a big old can of worms here.
you think, oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway, we let's not open up the can of worms. But the point is, there's a lot, like there used to be a guiding economic principle we had. I forget the term was called the bridge toll rule. Have you heard of that rule? Which is like, if there's a chasm and you build the one bridge over it in town, and there's some economic term for this, I forget what it is. You can't then make every trucker who wants to truck their goods across your one bridge pay any amount of money you want, right? You can't then you can't price the toll on the bridge to extract the total economic return of the truckers. You have to price it the fair market rate as if there were another alternative bridge. This is a pretty common principle of economics, because the argument is, if there weren't another, like it's extremely societally inefficient to have to build two competitive bridges every time there's a chasm, right? Like it's just a waste of resources for society perspective. What you need to do, like in the free market, that's what we would be led to do, right? So the way you shore this up is you have the government, mandate the one fair price for this to me is the bridge over the chasm phenomenon.
But William, let me just stop you for a second, because
I'm not going to get
the capitalist in me is so bothered by this, right? Yep. Facebook has billions and upon billions of dollars, right? They saw mobile too late. They saw gaming too late. They saw all this. Now they want into the party, and the guy running the party doesn't want to let them in, so they can go cry to the regulators and the government and solve their problem, or they can do what good business does and go release a Facebook phone, go build your own ecosystem, go build your own walled garden, go do all those competitive things to make the market better. Don't ask for a handout to, and knock down the guy who did all the work to build the thing that they did.
It's the opposite. I would make a counterpoint to you, which is one, just because the guy asking is a bad guy, just because the guy getting screwed over is a bad, doesn't mean they don't have rights, right? Like, let's be honest, Facebook is doing some pretty sketchy stuff with what they're allowing in their ecosystem, right? They are.
I don't care who's good and who's bad. The point is, someone built something that fundamentally works and keeps outsiders out. Right. And they can try and maintain that forever. I think trying to maintain walled gardens forever, eventually you get disrupted, eventually, by someone smarter, faster, different, not by forcing competition. Like, I think naturally that App Store walled garden will fall. I don't think they hold that monopoly forever, but I'm not sure regulation is the answer. And I definitely don't think Facebook needs the help. They have resources to compete.
Okay, because you're talking to a guy, like, and I consider myself a pretty hardcore capitalist, and I'm all about break up the telecoms. Like, I'm 100%.
That's the opposite of a capitalist.
No, it's not. You need free.
Yes, it is. The largest telecom companies are far more efficient in the capitalistic system.
Let's not go into the Leonard Hand, Richard Posner economic theory stuff. Let's leave that to the side.
Let's leave that to the think tanks, aka Lindsay, who agree with me.
Well, okay.
Not that their research isn't all funded by Facebook.
No, it depends on what measure you're looking at. And this is actually a problem with where I work, is that depending on how you're looking at it, both of you are right. So
this is impossible. We can't both be right, Lindsay.
You can, though, because there is an argument to say that the Apple App Store cuts off other companies and practices anti-competitive behavior. However, there is also an argument that says that Apple has exactly the right to do that because they're the ones who built and created this system, and there's nothing standing in the way of anyone else who wants to build and create a system.
And they didn't build it overnight. They've been building this walled garden for 15 years, 20 years. People have had ample time.
Are they too entrenched now to be deposed? And that could represent a threat to possible practices that would be more expensive for consumers. So that's the whole crux of the issue. It goes in circles.
I hate the guy who gets to the party 6 hours late and then complains there's no pizza left. Like, get there early on time and you would have had pizza.
Yeah, just predict the future.
I'm not saying either side is blameless here. It's interesting. Like there are valid points on both sides. I guess I'm I do tend to think that this argument that there could be competition, so the fact that there isn't means everything is kosher, is not an argument I necessarily buy. Because like I said, in my bridge example, that would mean that every bridge that's ever built over a river would need another bridge right next to it. And we know that makes obvious sense as an inefficient market. There are times when it's okay for regulation to mandate an efficiency as if there were competition. And I think this is, but it also comes down to the fact that, look, and this is more a principle thing. I'm probably biased by the fact I, as a consumer, don't like these walled gardens, right? I fundamentally don't think the iPhone is a great piece of consumer tech. I think it's propped up by an app store, right? I'm being honest, right? Like I don't get excited for iPhone 11. I don't think it's led innovation for a while. I'm probably wrong. It's the most valuable company in the world. So I don't know. I don't like to see a business that I think I have some challenges with. I don't think Apple is a tech leader. I think they're coasting on decisions which, again, maybe you can make the argument you should be allowed. Look, you made some visionary decisions. You should be allowed to coast for a long time, maybe forever, but I don't know. I would like to see more pressure put on Apple in the market to innovate. The fact that it took them till the most recent iOS update to have your call on Apple not take up the whole screen, like the feature that's been with Droid for 6 years. I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah, there's benefits to those walled ecosystems, though, right? That's why your parents probably use an iPhone and an iPad. Mm-hmm. And I can almost guarantee everyone watching their parents use an iPhone and an iPad.
Oh yeah, I mean the network effects Apple has are unreal.
Well, not just that; it's for the non-techies, for the those walled garden and those closed ecosystems make things simpler. Yeah. You can't. There's a lot less you can do to break things. Yep. So yes, you take away some freedom from the user and some functionality, but you make it a lot simpler. So there's a market for that. And Apple has, I would argue, completely dominated or even monopolized that market. Completely.
Apple has done a great job of recognizing that there's a huge market to buy technology on visual appeal and ease of use, right?
That's it.
That actually, you could actually look at technology as just being, the commodity is what it does, right? Anything opens email. Doesn't matter if this opens email better than the other commodities opening email. It's just the things you buy on there, how easy is it to use and how pretty does it look?
Derek says, do you guys have concerns around Facebook because of their history of consumer data use?
Really?
Yeah.
For sure. Definitely.
So Apple here is the savior, keeping the bad guys out.
Well, and we are talking about a deal between Apple and Facebook is much more likely than Apple's rejection of some tiny company's game that they are hoping to get on the App Store. You can look at the Hong Kong protests. As soon as there's protest map, an app to track protest maps, Apple rejected it and Google didn't. I don't think that Facebook and Apple is where the issue is going to be with Apple's App Store. There's a whole walled garden that brings out a whole other set of issues. Facebook has the time, money, and power to deal with this and submit a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th time, whatever, until they eventually make it onto the App Store. But there's lots of apps that don't have that opportunity, which again can be seen as a good thing because again, that's how Apple gets its reputation as a company that's all about privacy and security. But there is a huge negative to that. So,
here's the thought, guys. If Microsoft's getting into bed with Facebook, which they are now.
Yep. Yeah.
Where does that leave Apple? Who could they get into bed with on the gaming side potentially?
I don't think they want to get into bed with anyone.
Yeah, I don't think Apple is really likely to. Yeah, I don't think they're. If anything, Apple would, their whole walled garden philosophy is going to say they'll make a bed themselves,
I don't know how long they can go that route with gaming though. And have anything more sophisticated than just like Apple Arcade. Like that I think they could execute fine on their own. Anything bigger, more sophisticated than that, I have a funny feeling they're going to need a partner. Is there a world where Apple and Twitch get into bed together?
That would be Amazon and Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be Amazon. Yeah. It's no. Yeah.
No.
Not only that, but it goes against your description of the Twitch market as the hardcore. Like you just described Apple as the casual user, Twitch as the hardcore user. there's not really a demographic overlap there. You know?
Well, there is on the just chatting side, right? Like that whole market of creative art, dance. Like I feel like potentially, yes.
I mean, but Apple also launched its own streaming service that has miserably failed instead of trying.
Streaming, no, like movie streaming.
Yeah, like regular
Yeah,
streaming.
but this goes more to my strip.
Like I'm just saying, it's more
goes
likely
back to my
for Go Entertainment to launch their own.
This goes back to my strip peeling argument. But I think you're more likely that Apple builds their own just chatting service and peels that vulnerable demographic off of Twitch, right?
Potentially.
That's how Twitch loses to flensing. Do you guys know that word? That's like to strip the flesh from. That's like a really great evocative old word. It's like they get flensed.
How do you know that, but not Migos?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Where Lindsay. Are you spending your time?
Dungeons and Dragons. It's a great complete book of wizard spells, 2nd edition D&D. Perfect for SATs.
Guys, let's move on. I like this article. I want to talk about it. Included with your next apartment, VR pods and esports arenas. Developers in the world's most expensive housing market rely on high-tech clubhouses to attract home buyers. And here they're talking about in Hong Kong, where, you know, like how if you live in a high-rise building in New York, there's like usually a party room or a gym or a pool. Here now they're thinking, let's build VR pods and esports arenas into residential buildings. I think it's kind of genius. Like the closest I've seen in the US is like a nice building. Some nice buildings will have like golf simulators, like you can go down and hit golf balls like in a golf simulator, but a VR pod or like an esports arena like this would just be awesome.
Legit. This is a really good idea.
So cool.
Because when you're doing apartment shopping, right? You know, when you're going to your swanky apartment market, right? Like, what are the things you're buying on? One is your apartment. Does it meet your specifications? Is it nice, right? And yeah, that's the vast majority of what you buy on. But clearly amenities are a significant differentiator for apartment buildings, because I think we've all done the math of, well, I liked the room better in that one, but the other one has a nicer gym, right? You're telling like and then clearly the other thing is there's a big move towards trying to build, you know, micro communities around apartments. This is the whole like free coffee in the mornings thing that's catching on in apartment buildings. They want you to intersect with the tenants because it builds loyalty and you're less likely to move and you're less likely to turn the apartments over. Dude, like if I was looking at an apartment and it had a gaming, I just have all these fantasies. I'd be like, I'll come down here at night with a beer, I'll play, I'll run into some other gamers. Before long, we're running a League of Legends 5-stack. It's great. I've made new best friends. Like, to me, you know, I look at the foosball table and the pool table that they have, and I'm like, never going to use those. Yeah. Like, you know, never. But this is something I could see myself using. I think this is genius. Genius.
You'd have entire tournaments popping up against, like, instead of intramural or like intercollegiate, like it's intra-residential. Yeah. Like,
I've lived this, guys. I've lived this. This was my college dorm room with gaming. There was a common space. It's the equivalent of this. It was amazing. And you're telling me I can go back to that? I mean, you know, I think the reality is people come home from work, they're tired. This space is treated just like the common space is treated in your apartment buildings right now, largely empty, except for that one annoying group of hipsters, right? You know, but it doesn't matter because the amenity space sell you on the apartment and the fantasy and not what you actually do when you move in. And these will do well.
No, but there's probably a whole business around retrofitting apartment building, like party rooms into things like this. Like, to me, you know, we get this question so often around physical esports arenas and their viability. Like, this is a way better play, I think, than trying to go build standalone, you know, thousands and thousands of standalone esports arenas across the country.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. I mean, it's interesting. Like, you know, I mean, I think this is not a revenue generator, right? This only works because it's attached to a different revenue generating business. I think what you're going to see is these micro scale, this is the equivalent of a micro land center, right? These micro land centers were never going to be profitable by themselves, but they might be really interesting complementary businesses for demographic appeal, right? You know, just like the pool is a loss leader for your apartment, but you get it because certain people won't rent an apartment unless there's a pool, you know? Yeah, I would like this though. I mean, I would actually, honestly, I wish, like, sometimes I feel like, if only I'd been born 10 years later. Like, where was this when I was looking for apartments? This would have been so cool. You know, I would have met Brady. Brady would have been my new best friend. We would have been hanging out together. We'd have a cute story about how Brady and I met in the apartment building. You know, sorry, why do you have that face?
Who's what?
Yeah.
Brady's
Who's Brady?
Brady's my hypothetical best friend who I met in the Team Razor Gaming Center.
You asked me why the face. That's why the face.
What?
Derek says, sign me up. He says, if it had a rhythm game area, I'd move there tomorrow. This is a dream come true.
Yeah, everybody likes it.
Are rhythm game esports a thing? That's actually a good kind of tangential question. Are rhythm game esports a thing? We ever going to see, what's the most commonly played other than like Just Dance?
I don't know. You know, I feel guilty because a podcast listener.
I mean, Beat Saber is probably the most popular right now.
Mhm.
I would argue. Will we ever see Beat Saber esports?
Guitar Hero count?
Re-rave. Somebody said re-rave in the chat. You'd probably see. You could. Why not? You know, why not? I just think nobody thought you could see chess esports, and then here we are. You know, I think anything that's competitive can be made into an esport if there's enough of a community here. And like, there's competitive dancing, there's competitive cheerleading. Like, these are close.
A competitive DDR match would be awesome. I'd watch that in a sec. I like to like go to Dave and Buster's and see those people that are super good at it, that are just like in the corner feeding the machine and chugging glasses of water. They're awesome.
Oh yeah, those guys are
so entertaining.
Except at that point, DDR doesn't look like dancing anymore. It's literally like just
so great.
Feet twitching.
Blurred legs.
Leg twitching.
Yeah.
Literally somebody who's surprised, somebody who's shockingly good at DDR. Of course, that would be something.
You are shockingly good at DDR, William?
Yeah, I'm actually very good at DDR. Yeah,
I would be happy to do a live stream where we have a DDR battle.
That almost might be worth the game live stream if we can get William on DDR.
Abyss on heavy mode. Oh, that's my jam. No, but like yeah, I'm just embarrassing myself tonight. First with the Brady comment, and now with the DDR stuff.
Nobody knows who Brady is.
No, this is good because now we have like a nice little joke with the live stream viewers that we can hold in the podcast proper. And Brady will come back.
We're gonna change William the Professor Collis to William Brady's BFF Collis.
Brady's the best friend I never had.
William, what were your main characteristics of a successful esport? You mentioned is in the book.
Oh, that's a wow.
I pre-ordered already. Don't worry. So you're not giving anything away. He's already pre-ordered your book.
Well, first of all, Martin, one, thank you for the pre-order. Two, you know, to answer it at a high level, like there were 5 factors that first of all, I realized you couldn't predict the success of a game a priori, right? Because it's just too difficult. It's too hit driven. There's too many zeitgeist factors. What you can do is project the trajectory of a game. You can kind of predict the inflection curve it goes on. There were 5 factors. Without going into too much detail, network effects and switching costs are very significant. They add up into omens, is what they spelled. Network effects and switching costs are super significant. What's going on in the ecosystem is significant. The ability of cloning the game was really significant. And then the monetization models that the game employed, particularly around pricing. You didn't want to get low price. That's the quick summary of the 5 factors that I found. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share more if you want to message me on LinkedIn or something, but I don't want to derail the conversation, but those were the 5 things that I think are significant and predict performance of esports post-launch and long-term.
William, what was the example? Do you remember I don't remember the game that you used or the games that you used as examples as you walked through that.
Oh, I added a bunch of sidebars to the book before and published to highlight other games, but the big ones I look at is Fortnite versus PUBG versus Apex Legends, right? Because I think with Fortnite, you have a really nice example of Fortnite versus PUBG, where PUBG doesn't do things, right? And Fortnite does, so Fortnite wins. You have Apex coming after. Apex copies some of the things from Fortnite's success, but not all of them, and Fortnite adjusts. And as a result, you have Fortnite sustain its championship category, and Apex does sort of well, but nowhere near the zeitgeist and penetration as Fortnite. And I mean, you can go through the examples, but and without going too much into detail. You can look at how Fortnite encouraged network effects and switching costs in their business model. PUBG just completely didn't do it. Apex Legends tried to do it. They had a lot of the same functionality, particularly around digital collectivity of heroes, that was interesting, but they never were able to get the flywheel, if you want to use that strategy example, spinning in the business model. Sorry, guys, I don't want to derail this as a whole side conversation. I feel like this should be another topic, but I'm happy to go through. But you can also look at it.
It's super good, William. This is how you plug your book.
All right, sorry. I just feel guilty.
Oh, God. Instead of me just every week going, buy William's book. It's the best. Like, give them a little sneak peek, you know?
Yeah, all right. So for you guys, so look, and the more interesting question with the Omen's business model right now is, what does it predict about Valorant? That's the big question I ask myself right now, right? That was the last thing I added to the book, because in my mind, anybody can take a framework and design it retroactively and say, well, I predicted history correctly. Look how smart I am, right? Like, in my mind, Valorant's the really interesting test, because I think Valorant does a lot of stuff right and a lot of stuff wrong. So if you look at the Omen's parts are opportunities for cloning, monetization models, ecosystem network effects, switching costs. Those are your Omen's factors there. So I think if you just want to hypothetically look at Valorant, the ecosystemic factors are really phenomenal for them, because they're leveraging the whole Riot Games LCS potential model that they can clone over there. So they do really strongly there. Their monetization model is excellent as well, because they're on a classic freemium microtransaction model, which is largely the default monetization model that most successful esports need to employ. And they don't have any upfront costs associated with it. Like, you can look going back to Fortnite versus PUBG. PUBG required an upfront $29.99, and if you look any game in esports, the upfront or box copy costs are just a handbrake on their success. So their M factors are really strong too. The opportunities for cloning, you can argue about how hard it is to do. I think the core shooter experience is pretty easy to duplicate today, but if you're willing to give Riot the benefit of the doubt and you say they have a really finely tuned game, right? Like a really finely tuned game. And I don't know if they do or not, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that's really hard to do. The competitive balance stuff is really difficult to clone. Plus, they've got all sorts of other things like global server infrastructure, 128 tick servers, Vanguard, they have a lot of additional technology that even if you could copy the core game, it would be difficult to have the same experience. So 3 of their, 5 factors look good. Then you start to come to some questions I have about Valorant. And my questions for Valorant is really, how effectively is it designed to capture network effects and switching costs, which are more traditional economic models? Because I'm uncomfortable with some of the things I see there. Like, I don't like, for example, that in Valorant, the hero selection, and this is very myopic, but it's a good example. I don't like the fact that hero selection in Valorant happens after you've matched with players, not before. I think a huge way that publishers can leverage network effects is actually making the hero selection happen a priori to the match pairing, because it makes larger pools of players much more valuable to game liquidity. And it also candidly leads to higher qualities of matches. How many times have you queued into Valorant and been frustrated you didn't get the one healer that's in the game, right? So it's a better user experience that better leverages the network effects in the space. And switching costs, I think it's weird, because these are the guys Riot correctly saw the value of producing a large digital inventory of heroes with League of Legends. And you can go back to the very beginning and you can see Riot panicking as they're launching, because they don't think they have enough heroes to collect. They were planning to go to market with saying like 32 heroes, and they ended up going up to 42 at the last minute, because they were just convinced that the collectability of heroes in early day was really important to locking in the user. 12 heroes or 14 heroes for Valorant at launch. It feels strange to me when one of the most effective methods you see in other digital goods like CCGs is these digital baggage, these digital inventories. They're not giving people enough meaningful gameplay hooks in the digital inventory. And it kind of comes down to what I think is the biggest potential handbrake on Valorant's success. And it's Riot is being too games design led with this title. They're letting this myth that they're great at competitive polish and, the best, most premium, and every hero is perfectly balanced. They're letting that narrative hold back what in my mind should be obvious business decisions. You need to have a large pool of heroes at launch. You need to have matchmaking technology that's very refined, right? And allows you to leverage the large user base you're going to come in to put up barriers to entry. So sorry, that was a little bit of a long-winded response, but I think you're going to see, they have 3 of the 5 factors and say a half of each other one, you know. So I think you'll see Valorant be a big success. Won't knock off CSGO. And I'm telling you right now, and that's what I would say the omens factors predict about reading Valorant in a, you know, 2-minute summary, if that makes sense.
I love it. It's brilliant.
Oh, you guys are so nice. What is it? Where did it come from? Oh,
just,
there it is.
I mean, if you didn't have enough reasons to buy the book before, this is what I love about it, is the application to sort of stuff in the news today. Martin asked, actually, can rhythm games satisfy this? I assume they could, right, William? There's nothing stopping a rhythm game from meeting those same 5 criteria.
Yeah, they should be generic. I mean, the bigger question that I'm asking myself right now, Martin, is do other businesses satisfy this? Is it not just about games? Like, is it a model for all media? Is there a twist you can make on omens that describes all media businesses? Like, can you talk about Marvel and the Marvel films? Can you talk about film franchising models and say, do they have omens factors? And some of them port and some of them don't, right? Like, monetization model doesn't make sense when you're talking about a film, but you might be able to talk about something like ecosystem. Like, you can argue that the strength of Marvel's fandom and the decisions they make to promote dialogue and engagement is a really meaningful factor for why Marvel films were so successful early on, right? They purposely built with an idea towards developing a community.
Guys, I don't have any other stories this week. For anyone watching, is there anything else you guys wanted us to cover? Anything that was of interest that came out this week that we haven't addressed? Look, I hope that we sufficiently teased the Facebook Mixer discussion. I will tell you, we go into a ton of it on the podcast. We really do. And so if you felt like you were a bit cheated today on the live stream, I highly recommend listening to the podcast tomorrow, because we spend almost all of our time there. Cameron said that may have just sold me on the second purchase. And Greg says, great discussion, William. Yeah, I mean, so there's a reason they call him the professor. Come on,
a lot more frameworks in the books, guys.
There are more frameworks in the book. I think it's the best. It's the biggest strength of the book, and what you don't get with any other book that's out there in the space right now. Like, there's a lot of people telling stories about like their history in esports or what has happened in the past. To me, there's nothing that examines the industry in such a structured way.
It's a business book. You need to, I think it's only helpful unless you can predict what goes forward. And well, rightly or wrongly, we'll see how closely I got it. I certainly didn't predict Mixer. You know, I didn't like say already point to things that maybe, but like I do think.
I mean, not everyone can be the prophet.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I do think it's structurally like it's at least an intellectually rigorous structural theory for what might happen. And that alone is, you know, I think is worth something in the space. And maybe there will be refinements for the theory over time. Certainly, I'm thinking about a second edition. I'm thinking about things. Paul and I want to write our next book together ourselves that I think could continue to advance this. But I think the point is there's no real body of frameworks or thought around why esports behave the way they do. And at least now there is something that you can at least disagree with. You don't even have to believe what I'm saying is right, but at least you can read it and have an opinion. And at least there's a structure now that lets you engage in a debate about why a game might be successful, because it's hard to do that if you don't have a framework like omens. You're just saying things like, I think Valorant's fun to play. I think Riot's a big company with a lot of resources. Like, it's not very helpful, you know?
Guys, on that note, that wraps up this is our fifth post podcast. I don't know if I want to call it the post podcast live stream or the after show live stream. I'd love their thoughts on that. I know it's a minor thing, but I've been debating which one I like better. So this is our fifth. It officially wraps it up. Thank you guys, William, Lindsay, as always. Please go order William's book, The Book of Esports. Here, let's flash it one more time, William, just in case. On Amazon, you can go pre-order it now.
You can also buy it off williamcollis.com. It'll link you to Amazon. I did do that.
Actually, you know where you can get it too? If you go today to the businessofesports.com, actually, this is a new feature on the website. Click on Esports 101. Guess what you get? The Book of Esports.
My God,
you get it right here. And not only that, there's more, folks. A convenient buy link right from the website.
My God, it is a good book to buy.
And actually, we've recently added a video tab that has my little 1-minute video clips. We're going to upload our live streams here as well. So you'll be able to get everything from the website eventually. That's the goal.
Which, by the way, guys, the 1-minute recaps, if you don't watch them, like, they're really good. Like I watch them and I have to fall. Like I literally am like, oh, Paul's posted 1-minute recap. Here we go. They're really helpful.
Cameron says William keeps swearing. Biz Esports After Dark.
Swearing? Okay.
We I don't know if we're the cast for Biz Esports After Dark. That might be frightening, considering we didn't get the Amigos reference.
It's Migos. There's no A. I will host that one.
But thank you guys for tuning in every week. For those who have tuned in every single week, we really appreciate it. Keep the questions coming. Keep the thoughts coming. Topics you want us to cover on these live streams. They're really, we could probably go 3 hours and not even realize it. Just talking about anything and everything happening in the business of esports. So anything you want us to talk about every week, feel free to send it our way. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to catch the podcast tomorrow, and make sure you check out my 1-minute videos every Monday. They drop every Monday. 1-minute recap of everything from the last week. On that note, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.